Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today we did get the trailer for the final, I can't believe I'm saying this, Elite Specialization for Heart of Thorns. Man, I wonder how long it will be before we're on to the Gen 2 ones, but this is it guys, this is the last week. The last time we get a new Elite Specialization and find out how our beloved core professions in GW2 eventually will be. So it is, of course, the Ranger Elite Specialization, the Druid, the first to have been announced and the last to have been revealed. So here you can see the image that they did tweet out. This is obviously the Druid. No, this is actually, they're going to do 2 specializations for the Elementalist. The next one's the Nature Mancer. And we're going to get a 5th nature achievement. No. Look, we got the Druid here. What can we really discern from this picture? Well, 3 things. I'm going to point out 2. Number 1, the staff. And we already knew we had a staff. First to be announced, the Druid's weapon has been known for a long time. Even since the original trailer, we got to see it using that staff. I'll discuss in just a second. But actually, the skin itself, the Elite Specialization specific staff, which at this point, guys, has been confirmed that the way this will work is once the expansion comes out, we'll get a new line we can train. Training through that line, we'll be spending hero points to get traits and utility skills as we go. And then at the end of the line are just 2 really long, difficult ones to get. One will be for the weapon skin, one will be for the armor skin. So it's Guild Wars 2's idea of mechanics first, cosmetic grind later. And then, of course, we get their unique armor too, which isn't a headpiece, it seems to be a shoulder piece here. And is all bony and looks like we just kind of killed our pet and stuck it on our shoulder. I suppose that's quite druidic. But also, kinda sad. Sorry, Porky, the pet pig. I guess you're not going to be with me in Heart of Thorns. So moving on, there's quite a few areas we can look at. Now, what else do we know about the Druid beyond just this trailer? This is a lot like the Scrapper in that, in truth, we actually, because this has been known for such a long time, do have a fair bit more information that came out just from this Monday. Number 1 is, of course, the footage of the staff in use from the early trailers. Now, consider this, guys. The Druid is over, this footage we're seeing of the Druid is over half a year old now, and big things could have changed. It was months after we saw this that, for example, Tempest-wielding swords were data mined, and then that got scrapped. So, who knows whether these animations are still in play? And actually, I'd be very likely to say they're not, because what we see in that trailer is essentially just Elementalist staff animations just working slightly different. Pretty lame, right? So I would expect that to be different, especially considering a lot of work's gone into staff animations because of the Daredevil and the Revenant. There is also, on the topic of maybe this footage being kind of old and outdated and maybe not too indicative of what we'll eventually get, is the fact that it does seem a very big prevailing theory right now, and one that the more I hear, the more I'm beginning to believe, is that the Druid was absolutely not ready until fairly recently and had to be gutted and kind of redone with a different mechanic. Why? Well, this is something we discussed last week about how on the Guild Wars 2 profession page, they seem to have listed out the exact order of all these Elite Specialization reveals, except the Ranger, who was due to be revealed 4th, and then ended up being revealed last, 9th of all in the end. And so with that in mind, that could mean the original footage we saw is a little out of date, even going so far as to point out the pet is there in the trailer, and maybe the Druid will be a petless Elite Specialization one day. Before we get onto that topic though, one more point of interest, one more thing we do know about this class, possibly, comes from the world of data mining. And it's actually these skill icons. Now, I talked about these in a previous Elite Specialization week. I talked about these during the Tempest week. What we're looking at here are glyphs from the Elementalists in Guild Wars 1, and they have been recolored so as to suggest different attunements. Except these were never used on the Tempest, were they? So some people have the idea that maybe the Druid will be able to attune to various aspects of nature, and through this, they will get access to different skills. Maybe, basically, the Druid new utility skill type is going to be glyphs. Now, don't take this as a really strong theory, because honestly, these are just placeholder icons. They've just been tinted a different color. They're absolutely placeholder icons. They're exactly copied from Guild Wars 1. We saw them do that with, for example, the Chronomancer in the beginning. They were using like Guild Wars 1 mantras, but did the Chronomancer end up getting more mantras than the base Mesmer? No. But this idea specifically that the Druid might be able to attune to different aspects is a nice idea, especially considering you've got people like the Zephyrite and already various facets of nature, maybe, that the Druid could attune to. Because, of course, the idea of the Druid is that it's going to be more of a spellcaster. While regular Rangers are more like Aragorn and they're more medium armor guys and they're more seen as rough and tough adventurers out in the wilds, The Druids are probably more spellcaster themed. That's why we're seeing them with a staff. I think a lot of people in the MMO circuit, when they think of the word Druid, they've probably played World of Warcraft. And what do we see Druids as in that franchise? Well, actually shapeshifters. That's not totally typical though, and that's not really going to fit in Guild Wars 2, where transformation is something we see like particularly associated with the Norn, but let's be honest, transformation exists in more than just that one race. It's on most classes and some of the other races as well. Another theory is the idea of mind controlling into your pet. And again, I don't quite believe this is going to be what we'll see. This is one of the top prevailing ideas people have for the Druid, and this is that you could maybe press F1 or something, it would change, and instead of controlling your pet through these kind of clunky-ish buttons Rangers currently get, instead you will be able to directly assume the form of that pet, morph your mind into it through the power of nature and spellcasting, and actually control your bear. And while you're controlling your bear, his abilities are much more amplified. You get direct control over all of them instead of just one of them. Maybe you get a few more ones to boot, and what happens to your regular player? Your player becomes the AI? Or your player just disappears? I think it would be much more likely your player disappears. But so this is one of the ideas for the Druid, you know, that it's got this transformation element to it, but I don't think we're going to see that. I think maybe this is what the devs were playing with originally for the Druid, and then they realized it wasn't working for whatever reason. The whole thing had to be gutted, and that's why we saw, you know, it was missing on POI and eventually released last. But I'm not sure whether that's what we'll eventually see. I'll be ready to eat my hat if that's true, though. No, what I think we'll see is much more of a backline spellcaster, much more your typical fantasy Druid, not like Blizzard's interpretation. But when I think of Druids, I think of some of the early RPGs I played, like the Might and Magic series, where you had nature-based spellcasters who tended to be cloaked and almost cult-like. And these glyphs could instead be us attuning to various aspects of nature. Some people have put forward the idea that you could group pets up into like 4 broad categories, as actually once upon a time ranger traits functioned this way, and then depending on which of those like you lean into, it changes your utility glyph skills. That also, I suppose, is a possibility. But that leads me handily into another big topic, and this is the pet. What do we do with the pet, guys? The ranger is in a difficult place because a lot of people play ranger for the pet. ArenaNet designed the class for the pet. They basically said, look, there is no such thing as a ranger without a pet, okay? If you're playing a ranger, you're playing it because you like pets. If you don't like pets, if you want to be Aragorn, for example, you want to be that kind of ranger, you want to be just a badass with a great sword, you need to look at a different class. And there was never anything that really fitted that theme as well as we wanted it to. So you have a lot of people bundled into ranger right now. You've got the genuine pet lovers, and then you got the people that are just playing it because like it's the closest that they can get. That's not even to mention the mechanics of the pet. There are a lot of players out there who feel like their class by design is flawed because a portion of its power has been stripped from the ranger itself and put in the pet. Everything is balanced around the fact that a ranger is never alone, so they're toned down to compensate. And this frustrates rangers. This particularly frustrates rangers in PvE who would find when pets were, especially in years past, where pets were even clunkier and worse than they are now, they just get one shot by a big tail and all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I'm doing worse than another class. Please, ArenaNet, give me a ranger without a pet. It's a big argument, and there are a lot of supporters for that. So now we have elite specializations, and of course, this is ArenaNet's out. This is their way to give us a ranger without a pet, but did they do that for the Druid? Now, I am entirely confident that they will one day give the rangers what they seek. They will have an elite specialization that has no pet, but did they do it this time? I would say no. I think the biggest evidence for that is the fact that in the original trailer we saw a pet with the Druid. I think that was very deliberate to make people know, hey, yeah, you're getting a pet. I think that even if you subscribe to the theory that there was a big overhaul to the Druid, since the original trailer and today, they probably still had it as a class that was going to have a pet into another class that was going to have a pet. But what they really want to do, I think, is they want to make rangers love the pets that so many of them have learned to hate. So there'll be some big interplay there. Many people also theorize that the ranger spirits will also be sort of retroactively buffed through combining with the druid. Obviously, the idea of the spirits of nature that just base rangers get has a thematic synergy with the idea of the druid. When you look at something like the Daredevil, what we had was a specialization line, acrobatics, that felt lackluster. But then they released an elite specialization that was a perfect complement to it, and now you'll actually not only see daredevils be ran, but acrobatics see more use too, just because of the synergy it provides. And I think once again with the ranger, the devs have a perfect opportunity to kind of retroactively buff and incentivize nature magic, because you're going to have nature magic spirit-based druids. And that is another big angle that we'll see go forward with them. That's pretty much most of the discussion you can do on the pets. We'll see what ArenaNet goes with. But there is one more thing I would like to add, and a very exciting prospect at that I'm fairly confident in. I'm going to look like an idiot if this is wrong, but let's dive into the possibility. So this image that came out today actually has something a little more than just the gear that the Druid will be running. As you guys know, that all of these Elite Specialization art pieces are based on the original images of the professions you can see on screen right now from the game's launch, and they've just been all Elite Specialized. Now, on that original picture of the Ranger from launch, the Ranger's pet is clearly in view. So where's the Druid's pet? It's not true that it's missing entirely. It actually is there. It's just in the background. So here you can see the pet. This is not a pet that Rangers currently have access to. I think many of us were expecting some new Ranger pets regardless of what the Druid was going to be like, right? You know, it's an expansion, you can expect a few new pets. But specifically, this guy looks to me to be quite a big beast. A beast of burden. Perhaps a dinosaur or some other large denizen of the Maguma jungle we are yet to meet. Some people have theorized it's a wyvern, like an adolescent wyvern. Not only do I think, though, that we will get new pets based off of this image, but what are the odds that the unique mechanic isn't the Druid morphing into their pet's mind, and then there's a question of what happens to your real player character while you're in the pet's mind? What if it is still an idea of you merging with your pet, but instead it's you riding your pet? What if the Druid in the Maguma jungle basically gets mounts? I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds completely ridiculous, but think about it. It may have solved their problem of the mind control thing they had before. They could have had a whole ton of stuff to figure out, retroactively adding some kind of like transformation mechanic into every pet that already exists. But this way, what they do is they say, right, you get the Druid. The Druid has access to 4 to 6 new pets that you can only find in the Maguma jungle, and the Druid can ride these specific pets. You can equip any you like, but you'll be able to ride these ones, and these are your Druid pets. And I would not be making this suggestion to you guys if not for the fact that they have built in-engine the technology, the capability to have mounted enemies. We are seeing Hylic mount beetles, we are seeing Mordrum mount dinosaurs, and we're probably going to see Exalted mount stuff too. So why not the Druids? Is it a coincidence? I think not. I think that may be the main thing that we see with the Druid in Heart of Thorns. Last but not least, I would like to mention a little bit more on the name of this Elite Specialization, and that is, of course, what ArenaNet said about how they were going to have different Elite Specialization names based on different objectives. So some of them would be high concept, Dragon Hunter. Some of them would be more traditional fantasy, Druid, ? And some of them would be more Tyrian based. Well, here's the funny thing. The Druid actually, you might think is traditional fantasy, but also fits quite well as a Tyrian-based name too. It's no surprise that we're getting the Druid as we go to the Maguma jungle. There is story in the lore about a group of humans, probably Critons, I don't know if it was ever 100% confirmed they were Critons, who moved to the Maguma jungle and eventually disappeared. The sayings being that they ascended, they shed their mortal forms and became spirits to become one with nature. Those were the Druids. And the last of them was seen shortly before the beginning of Guild Wars 1, and it's been 250 years since that time too. So they're these mysterious old people, they're one of the mysteries I'm hoping to get answered in the Maguma jungle, and now we too will be people heading into the jungle and becoming Druids at that. Should be pretty interesting. So there you go guys, let me know what you think about my speculation for today. Sit tight for the Druid this week, the last one, and I'll keep you in the loop. See you next time everyone.